Good day. Good day, and I guess a happy Sunday and a happy President's Day Eve. I guess one could say that. I could never possibly tell you how fascinating the notion of the presidency is to me and how fascinating history as perspective is. Let me welcome you to today's immersion, our live stream. Let me ask you, of course, to please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that little bell so you're notified of such. Now, let me put things into perspective. Let me see if we can try to explain perspective. Everything that is happening today that I see, in all of the news and all of the social media references, it's as though people believed it just started now. Today is the Daytona 500. Have you ever been to one of those? Do you know what NASCAR is in the South in particular? Do you know the history of NASCAR? The Kyle Petty and Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough, and do you know what this is like? Have you ever been a part of this? Do you remember the day that Dale Earnhardt died? Do you remember this? They talk about soccer moms. Do you know what it means? It's called perspective. NASCAR versus open wheel. NASCAR, America. The way these were all bootleggers and was all post-World War II. 1959 was the first Daytona 500 ever. Have you ever seen it? Have you ever been to a NASCAR to hear the noise? Have you ever seen Bike Week in Daytona? Have you ever seen what that's like? It's not what you think it is. Perspective. Where did this come from post-World War II? NASCAR, by the way, these were old bootleggers, and they had to what's the word? They had to perfect means of escaping the revenuers and that sort of thing. And that's kind of sort of where this came from. You know, the whole notion of the General Lee and, Dukes of Hazzard and the speed in the car and that sort of thing. And then subsequent to that, or whatever, you can get into drag racing. Big Daddy Don Garlits. Cha-Cha Muldowney, the first female. Don Prudhomme, the snake. Drag racing. Oh my God. Then there was modifieds and funny cars and this. It is a collective swath of humanity, of American, that requires perspective, and no one has that. When people talk about, this is so funny, when people talk about an attempt to talk about things like President's Day, this is the best. I'm constantly putting things into perspective. Do you know what we do not have today? One thing in particular, we don't have stentorian speeches. We don't have orators. We don't have anything like that. We have nothing like that today. Who is an orator? I listen to sometimes just to hear Gore Vidal, and I don't agree with everything he said, but that doesn't matter. Just to hear his speech, to hear that level of speech, that incredible style, kind of the mid-Atlantic, to hear people speak like that. Same thing goes for Bill Buckley and George Plimpton, and who are orators today? Perspective, none. Henry Clay, William Jennings Bryan. Henry Clay and William Jennings Bryan, and I think Blaine ran 3 or maybe 5 times for president. Why don't we see that today? Because media today destroy candidates. They just use them up. You're just overdone with these people. You have nothing to do with them. They're spent. They're just desiccated once you get through with the notion of the candidate. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's this thing called perspective. We don't have this. Nobody talks about this. Nobody ever. And it's not. I'm not merely trying to say, oh, let's just be, priggish about history. No. This is different. This is about trying to grasp how things work vis-a-vis other aspects of how do we get where we are today? How do the parties get where we are today? Who are the parties? Who? What would be the closest to the Federalists today? Where do you see this going? Do we talk about this? No. None. And today, as you know, in many respects, politics is a theater. It is theater. Politics is today, in many respects, sad to say, what we believe is politics. It's this idea, I heard this said, this is promotional events for our depressing political influencer set. There are people who enjoy new status as the voice of. And listen, it's wonderful. It's terrific. It's great to have somebody say, let's talk about something that really matters. But do you know enough about it? Do you know perspective? No. Let me tell you a true story. I love, every now and then, you'll meet somebody, a young person, who is with it. Not that that's a rarity. I just don't run into that many. And we're talking about certain things. Music. So where did rock come from? What you call rock, what we call rock. Because he like kind of, classic, whatever. Where did rock come from? How did this evolve? Had to come from somewhere. It's kind of new. The Beatles. Who was before the Beatles? Who was before that? Who was before that? Was it that it was fast music? Well, not really. Well, what was it then? What was it? Was it fast music? Was it? No, there was fast. Benny Goodman and Gene Krupa, these people would swing. It was fast. But I believe, of course, they were fast. What was it? Was it the guitar? Okay, close. Where did the guitar come from? Remember, Charlie Christian in jazz was the guitar. That was the first time I really ever heard it. It was always kind of like that arch top. They were played almost flat. It was more rhythm. It wasn't, before Wes Montgomery and Barney Kessel and all that. But where did it come before that? Where was it? Country. Country. Where was it before that? Bluegrass. There we go. Keep going. That's interesting. So did rock come from country? Part of it. Rockabilly. Where'd that come from? Oh, that's right. Elvis, Jerry Lee, Carl Perkins. Okay, yeah. Country, yeah, sort of, okay. Huh. But that's not the only one. Chicago blues. That was electric. Oh, you're right. But what happened before that? That was Mississippi. Oh, so you've got two completely varying yet similar kind of sort of forces meeting together. And now you've got this. It's the subject matter. It's the grit. It's the style. It's the guitar. Then what? Now we got to wait. We got to wait for this next little. How does this work? How does this push? How do we encourage this kind of behavior? What do we do then? How does it? It's perspective. Oh, you're right. There's got to be these moments. Elvis was absolutely necessary. Got to have Elvis. Got to have the Beatles. Got to have this. Doesn't matter whether you like it. Doesn't matter. There are moments in history. The Whiskey Rebellion was here. You have to have moments that are, and now you understand. It's like, wow, yes. And the more you understand it, perspective and history, the more you understand what's going on right now, the more you can appreciate it. I love discussing the differences between Latin rhythm, African rhythm, and Brazilian rhythm. So similar, so different. Absolutely just so different. Completely. I got into a discussion the other day about explaining Cuban food with Mexican food. I said, the two have nothing to do with each other. Well, they speak Spanish, so what? What does that have to do with it? Island, Caribbean versus politics. Look at what's going on today. You're seeing something and you don't even recognize it. Nor will any of you who are younger or who, because you don't know my perspective, because I saw things different and I can see things differently now. The media today represent a runaway train. A runaway train that you want to run away. You got to keep feeding this 24/7, this maw, this open, gaped monster. You got to keep feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. And it doesn't matter. Keep going, keep going. I also talk about the attention span of a gnat, but you see a very quick, it's like you're watching news. Imagine watching news, sitting in a car, reading a newspaper or a magazine, versus driving by as people hold up the story on the side of the road. That's what you're seeing. No time for depth, no time for perspective, no time for anything. Keep moving. Keep moving. What's next? What's next? What's the take? What's the take? What are we going? Where are we going with this? Keep going. And is that good? Well, what's good about it? The good news is people are subjected to a lot more information. The bad news is they never land on it long enough. It's like me going to a little bee. It's like, look, look at all the flowers. Great. But the bee never, it's like, what are you doing? You got to go to each flower. What are you doing? I'm just flying around. I'm just looking at the flower. No. You got to land on the flower. You have to. This is pollination. You got to take the nectar and that. You're not doing that. You're just flying around. Land on it. That's where we are now. Perspective. Perspective. Do you get it? I'm seeing so much today. It's like, wow. I saw people today describe the Daytona 500. It's like, this is the most beautiful thing in the world. Do you know the story behind it? Stop for a second. Stop. This is uniquely American. This is not Formula One. This is not, Le Mans. This is not stuff. This is not Gianni Agnelli. This is not Fiat. And no. This is a different story. This is a different story. Another thing, too, is what do you think is the human notion of speed? Why do we do this? What is it about speed? We love speeding. We love fast. We love it. Do you recognize the perspective? Do you recognize the perspective? Do you understand the perspective? Do you see it? Can you feel it? Why is this important? Why are we doing this? Why do you call this American? Why is it? What is this about the South? What break it down. They don't have time. Why? Because this is the influencer set. They don't have time for this. Not only that, they don't know. And they don't care. And sometimes they're just kind of too young, don't understand it. Doesn't mean anything to them. I say, really? You don't know the history behind this? No. You really don't? No. And there's always been, whenever there has been a discussion of it, look at that was that Will Ferrell movie where they always make these people out to be crazy and rednecks and slow. Richard Petty was a genius. Now, to hear him speak, you would never confuse him with a Shakespearean scholar. Do you know the physical endurance of what this guy had to do? Driving in this, being able to understand muscle memory and feel that you can, from your feet to the way the car moves and slides, and you become, I mean, it is something that, and you see the greats. Donnie Allison, Bobby Allison, just go down the list, all the greats. Richard Petty was like just the, and then, I'm telling you, Dale Earnhardt, and the toughness. I mean, you're this close. And when somebody explains it to you, you say, watch what's happening. And then later on, it can be fascinating. But we don't have time for that because we're too busy moving on. Have you noticed when you watch any kind of YouTube or anything, there's this short of somebody showing you how to cook. And it normally is somebody, he throws meat down, he throws things down, fast jump cuts, shorts. No time, no explanation, no nothing. And the reason why they do it is because everybody else is doing it. It's the worst way to show anything. I mean, it's okay because I think it introduces people to cooking, but this is what's happening. You see, there's no perspective. There's no time for this. And it's become a new modality. It's become a new kind of a new way of jump cuts. If you would have put something on TV 10 years ago on a network with a jump cut where you have all of a sudden you take this, you take a person speaks, he or she takes a sentence, stops, says a second sentence, stops, third sentence, stops, and then you just put them together. You just remove the space. So they're saying 7 years ago, the news director would have gone crazy. They would have had to have put pictures and videos over the seam. Not anymore. That's considered part of this. We like this. Fast. Don't worry about information. Think form. Blast people with it. That's where we are today. Now, I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you that's the way it is. Whether you like it or not, that's just the way it is. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And I recognize that fact. And you've got to recognize that fact. Because nobody really understands what is happening here. Now, my friends, let me tell you something before we begin. I want to talk about our great friends at Z-Stack. Got a great special for you. I'm telling you right now, putting up right now. This is my link. Z-Stack. Z-Stack. Z is in Z. Use the code PRESIDENT15 at checkout for 15% off this week only. Free shipping in the USA. Go to my custom link right there, and you can thank me later. Why? What do you mean why? For your immune system? Hello. Just go through it. You know that you're smarter than most. Very nutrition oriented. Very nutrition oriented. But the problem is you're not eating right. And I know this, and that's okay. I don't want to give you a hard time about this. But for you to have a beautiful elixir that has vitamin C, zinc, quercetin, which is a flavonoid, and D, say no more. Okay? So use that right now. Use, again, special code, President15, using my link. And you are in for Flint. Also, talked to a friend yesterday. She and her husband during Hurricane Sandy, everything was closed. For what, 5 days or? She said it was 5 days. 5 days. There was nothing. And we talked about, well, what about emergency food? What about Prepare with Lionel from My Patriot Supply? Prepare with Lionel. Had no idea. What do you mean? You can have this in your garage. You can have this. You can always, no matter what happens. It just makes common sense. And right now there's a $250 offer, so to speak, a discount on a 3-month emergency food kit. This is a 25-year shelf life. in water-resistant buckets with resealable pouches, with oxygen chamber. It's got everything: breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, the whole shebang. It is right here. Go to preparewithlionel.com, preparewithlionel.com. Let me ask you right now, my friends, who's your favorite president? You know, we heard about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is a fine man. He's going into hospice. He seems to be at the end of a gallant. He's a decent man. You can argue whether he was efficacious as a president or not. That thing was doomed from the Iran Contra from the Iran hostages to inflation to the malaise. I think he really tried. He really tried. He's probably one of the best ex-presidents we've had. But many people are told to immediately say he is bad. He is bad. I don't know how long it takes for you to see a president. You have to have perspective. You have to see what people did. You can't sometimes look at something right away. You have to look. Every president had something. And I go through my favorites. It's like I go into a John Quincy Adams is my current favorite. Because he was just... And also, one of the most absolute... not deranged, but the one you will never understand is Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was wild beyond anything you can imagine today. And he, of course, took out Mr. Quincy Adams and others as well. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is it that somebody's appointed? Each person, Nixon, Eisenhower had the times they were in, what they were able to do. And the great spokesman, like I mentioned, Henry Clay, you'll never, ever be able to grasp what he could have done. It's incredible. Perspective, what they did, and when they could do it. You also look at people like Lincoln, FDR, Lincoln during the Civil War, FDR during the Depression and World War II. Were it not for them, would they still have been that great? Would they have been that great? You look at Abraham Lincoln. He talks about suspending habeas corpus. This just blows my mind. How do you... I'm telling you right now, and I'm saying to you, and I ask that you do everything in your immediate power to learn everything you can. And YouTube provides some of the best lectures from every conceivable angle you can imagine. They're just wonderful. And sometimes you take 3, 4, 5, 10 before you can triangulate kind of a feel for what it is. I think one of the greatest Americans ever militarily is George Marshall. George C. Marshall. Unbelievable. And we can argue about this, like when you say who's the best drummer, who's the best guitar player. You know, you have favorites and that sort of thing. And I don't want to see things as a favorite. I would like to think that my favorites were dependent upon the facts that I think them to be. This is an incredible story. And I can't emphasize enough how you have to pay attention now. And you have to sit back and watch. Take perspective, take history, but look at things now. What's happening? Don't jump into the whatever's popular, whatever the particular phraseology is today. Don't say things that you are later on unable to verify or to explain. Okay. This is the part which is critical. Always stay. How do we see this? Look at things without necessarily adding your predilections, your likes and dislikes. In fact, when you get the chance, step back and say, maybe I'm too close to this. Maybe I'm not objective enough. If there's somebody that you like, stop right now and say, I'm too close to the subject. Let me break this down. It's not about like or dislike. It's not which is your favorite Beatle. It doesn't work like that. Everybody. Because when you are the president, you walk into this arena and you are given situations that you have nothing to do with, nothing to deal with. Let me stop right there for just 1 second. Let me remind you of something again. I think for good reasons. I think you can kind of dig what's happening here. I want to talk about our dear friends at EMP Shield. Right there. Use this. Use my URL there. Electromagnetic pulse, a coronal blast, a sun blast, a Carrington event blast. Something that you cannot think of in terms of, well, as you can imagine. Now, the link is there. And what I want you to do is at your leisure, you go to EMP Shield, just use this, and just read. Just spend some time, and your jaw will drop. And you will be so schooled, so educated regarding EMPs, you'll be the hit of your neighborhood. So go there and check it out immediately. And by the way, while we're on this subject, I was listening to a documentary before, a study about why we sleep as much as we do. The quality of sleep, sleep cycles, restful sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep, 90-minute cycles. Your sleep is incredible. How many times have you just said, I'm not sleeping right? And you're sleeping theoretically for hours at a time. Maybe it's not the quality. Well, I can't control your brain waves, but I do have something to say about the comfort as how you luxuriate in our dear friends at MyPillow using promo code Lionel. They know exactly what they're doing. They have forgotten more about sleep than you will ever know. Why? By providing you with the accoutrement, the equipment, and the kit that is required and are required for you to enjoy a nice and beautiful, restful sleep. That's all I'm going to say. So do that. All right? Promo code Lionel, mypillow.com/Lionel. When you talk about Lyndon Johnson, when you talk about having lived, you have to also think, when was the first president you were really aware of? Where you were, paying taxes or going, it's one thing when you say, well, I remember LBJ when I was a kid, or I remember John Kennedy, yeah, but I mean, when were you? Because remember, we never saw, even during the times of President Obama, we didn't hear every single thing that happened. It was a different time. It was completely different. Same thing with Bush. It was different. It was totally different. You saw him, every now and then, but now every single thing. Everything changed drastically. And right now, if you had to explain this, if you had to go back in time, imagine going back to the 19th century and saying, when you were looking for Billy the Kid, you didn't even have a picture. You didn't even have the ability to print using, the dot, the little, whatever, there's a name for it. But you maybe heard of a president. Maybe you read a speech. Maybe you read something. But you had no. We live in a world where we have everything that you possibly can know about a president, the president's family, the president's children, the president's friends, the president's cabinet, the president, everything you can imagine. People commenting on the president, on the cabinet. People commenting on the commenting. You've got people commenting on the media. You have now, we used to have 3 networks. Now you have hundreds of thousands of people who have, and I think it's the most wonderful thing in the world that you have an ecumenical sense of anybody can come forward and say, I'm going to be a part of this. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful. I think the more information, the better. The more choice, the more samples, the more information. I'm still trying to get over the fact of how great music's. I'm listening to Spotify, and I just can't believe. I'll just put in some kind of, you could say, oh, Johnny Highland, great chicken picker. Let me see Johnny Highland radio. Pow! And I've got people I've never heard of before. I wouldn't change this for the world. Now, with this, of course, comes your duty to perhaps maybe filter some things out, but that's beside the point. It's beside the point. I love this. But I want people to spend one day with me, and you can only ask questions. You can't make a statement. You can't. You can't. You will see the world in a completely different way if you just ask questions and never make a statement. You will think and you will see the world differently. What is the difference? What America did John Kennedy experience? What did we not know about the Vietnam War? What did we not know about the Bay of Pigs? What threat did Castro pose? What involvement was organized crime with the OSS? Whatever. What is the importance of perspective? Explain the Vietnam War today versus, I guess this isn't a question, can you explain the perspective of the Vietnam War today versus what the perspective was in 1968 or 1975? What were the various perspectives? What did the parties mean? What was federalism? Why was federalism important? What role does history play? If you ever get the chance to go to Philadelphia, or Philadelphia as they say, you must go to the Constitution Center. It's the only, I believe it's the only place that is commanded or authorized by Congress to provide information as to the Constitution. It's fantastic, and they have wonderful lectures, and nonpartisan, bipartisan. It's wonderful. It's wonderful stuff. And unless you see this, you can't understand what American history is. It makes no sense. It makes sense. You have to know these rules. It's like trying to, if you watched cricket for the first time and nobody ever explained the rules to you or gave you the rule book, you'd be pretty good in figuring out kind of the rules, but you wouldn't know the nuances, the perspectives, the history, strategy. You got to know the rules. You have to know somebody to explain to you, this is why this is so. Here is something that has never occurred, not because there's a rule against it, but because of such and such. I remember one time somebody said, is there any rule that says we can't have 2 hockey goals in the whatever? And I remember somebody, perhaps I'm misremembering this, but somebody said, this is funny, there's nothing in here. It doesn't say, well, how come we haven't seen it? Well, I don't know. Is there anything that says such and such? Is there anything in the Constitution about the Air Force? Well, no. No. What about the number of justices? No. Anything about marriage? No. Anything about voting? No. Well, no. Really? No. And you've got a constitutional set. I can spend more time telling you what it doesn't address. And when you tell people this, to some people it bothers them. To me, it just cements my fascination with this. That's all I'm going to say. All right, my friends. I hope you have a great and a glorious day. Let me ask you a question, please. Have you signed up yet for Mrs. L's YouTube channel? This is so important. So good. Such great stuff. She is right there. Let me give you that. Please do this. Just click on right now. Click on her link, and you will be so happy. Also, her Twitter channel is incredible. And the reason for this is because she gives you a perspective unlike anybody else. And that is what I'm trying to do as well. All right? As far as me, you know how to reach me. Look, you have a great day. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Enjoy the car races, whatever you want. Remember perspective. And also today, on YouTube in particular, go and listen to yourself. Listen to a great lecture on Henry Clay. Listen to one on Henry Clay. Trust me on this. And you say, that was fantastic. Do another one. Do a nice little lecture on Tom Ricks does a wonderful lecture on George Marshall. Wonderful. You will say, why didn't I know this? Yes, I'm telling you. It's fantastic. All right, dear friends, have a great and glorious day. Don't ever change me that sincerely. See you tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, remember, the monkey's dead. The show's over. Sue ya. Ta-ta.